Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
So, it was 20 years ago today that Tony Blair walked triumphant down Downing Street to the delight of adoring crowds, all Labour Party activists, of course. The 1997 victory was the first of 3 general election wins for the Labour Party, and Tony Blair remains Labour's most successful leader to date. Let's take a stroll down memory lane.
If you'd said to me instead of 18, 19, you're going to be a politician, I would have said, forget it.
Maybe you ain't never gonna feel this way. You ain't never gonna know me, but I know you. Things can only get better. I sometimes lose myself in me. I lose track of time, and I can't see the words wrong.
Piccadilly Circus flashing on the screen there, the Labour victory.
A new dawn has broken, has it not?
It has been an immense privilege to serve as Prime Minister of the United Kingdom over the last 6.5 years.
2 of the new intake of Conservatives MPs with us, Andrew Lansley, MP for Cambridgeshire South, and Theresa May, the new Member of Parliament for Maidenhead. Good morning.
Well, we're joined now by the Guardian commentator Paul Mason, who's a critic of Tony Blair, and former Labour strategist who is a big fan, John McTernan. Welcome to both of you. A bit of nostalgia for both of you there, the archives working in overtime. Paul Mason, were you actually a Labour man in '97, or did you vote for Scargill Socialist Party?
I was a Labour man, and I think, however, if Jeremy Corbyn gets in on the 9th of June, it'll be a different set of people welcoming him. Yeah, I can remember I was there the next morning at work and on a business magazine where, you know, the sort of rank and file were voting Labour and the bosses were die-hard Tories, and it was a joy. Not just a joy, because some of them have flipped. Some of them came and said, I couldn't vote Tory.
All right. And
that was the nature of Blair's achievement.
And on the basis of that, do you think that coalition was too broad in the end for you?
That coalition, no, was not too broad. It's the coalition that Blair built in power, and those around Blair built in power with people, you know, basically whose wealth is unearned, and as well with the city. Basically, I think the big mistake of Blair and Brown, and it's been said in numerous reports into the catastrophe of 2008, was that they just got too close to people with money.
Right. Do you agree?
I want to agree with part of what Paul said. I want to say that the biggest failure, I think, of the Labour government under Blair and Brown was that we drifted too far from the unions, from the industrial wing of the movement. The TUC and the unions did need modernising. We offered a great agenda for working people, but I think if we'd invested more time in the union movement, modernising that, I'm not saying that I endorse everything that Paul said, but I think that there was a mistake there, and we're paying the price for it now. Jeremy Corbyn was put into power, or Ed Miliband before him, by weak and failing unions. And
right.
Union movement that should be stronger and more representative than it is now.
Should Tony Blair have been bolder? I mean, were those 5 pledges you made just too modest?
No, you should always under-promise and over-perform. And I think in his actions, you can't fault him in terms of the, you know, just tax credits, a fire hose, playing on rising inequality, the things he achieved, which people thought weren't possible. The modesty reflected the modesty of what people believed government could do. In the end, the government achieved, and we could do the list. I don't want to do the list, but I think he was bold, and people, I mean, the biggest reason people criticise him is for his boldest foreign policy moves, so he never lacked boldness.
Yeah, but on domestic issues, I mean, Paul Mason, I'll list some of the achievements, you know, John McTernan would have done, but, you know, the minimum wage, building new hospitals and schools, devolving power to Scotland and Wales. Do you concede that New Labour, Tony Blair and Gordon Brown did have a long list of achievements?
Not only concede it, I celebrate it. And at the time, you will remember, there was a debate within New Labour over top-down Fabianism versus bottom-up community politics. Charles Clarke, if you remember, raised this as a critique of Blair. And that would be a critique I think us on the left would share with that element of Blairism, because while he's doling out all these things from above, what's happening is that millions of working-class votes are moving away from Labour because they just don't feel that they're being empowered by it, I would argue.
Right, you're nodding. So you agree with Paul Mason then? I mean,
no, I don't agree with that analysis. That forgets John Prescott's great achievement. John Prescott brought in the Decent Homes programme, 2 million council homes modernised. Also, he brought in brownfield development, the city revolution. If you go to our major cities, they are a great success now because of the work of John Prescott and Tony Blair.
So why are there such staunch critics of Tony Blair like Paul Mason? If it was such a great success at every level, you seem to be implying, why is there so much visceral hatred of Tony Blair?
In my view, sometimes you can win too much. The Tory party have taken a long time to recover from Thatcher's great victories. She won so much, they then ran from her for 20 years. The same thing I think is happening in the Labour Party. There's almost a collective nervous breakdown that Tony won too much and too well, and that spooks people.
Right. Do you agree with that analysis?
I think I agree with part of that. I mean, one of the things about 1997 was that, and one of the reasons those pledges were so modest, is they were desperate to come in and fulfil those pledges. They were desperate to avoid the betrayal myth, which has hampered the Labour Party since Ramsay MacDonald. So they under-promised and hoped to over-deliver. And then I think the problem was the majority was so great that why are you just doing these modest things? I spoke to one Labour MP shortly after 97 who said he got his first betrayal letter within a week of being elected. And this idea that, which some people have, we haven't yet talked about it, but that all the problems began with Iraq in 2003 is just not true. The left was already fairly bitter about Labour, even by the 2001 election. All through that period from 97 to 2001, you can find complaints that Labour was selling out. They weren't achieving the change that had been promised. And actually they did achieve the change that they promised. It's just because of the majority, people had this perception that Britain was going to change overnight.
Yeah, and do you accept that? They didn't expect that big a landslide. And in the end, they could have reformed things in a much bigger, more meaningful way, but they hadn't planned for it and they didn't want to make the mistake. And the left of the Labour Party have unfairly criticised them for it.
Look, I don't think you'll find that the left is obsessed with the underachievement aspect.
It's foreign policy.
From my point of view, it's Iraq, number one, and then it's the lead up to the catastrophe of 2008, because it wasn't just that they misregulated
underregulated is the claim.
And Tony Blair makes this speech in 2005. I got called to go and cover it. He was attacking the FSA for being too hard on the city. Well, if you do that and the economy explodes, no wonder the people who pay the price, which is ordinary people, say, hold on a minute, never again you're going to do that.
What about John McTernan, the open door policy on Eastern European immigration in 2004? Was that a mistake now looking back?
That was one of Tony Blair's greatest single achievements. The people who joined the European Union had the right to come and live in Britain. Were we going to deny them? Were we going to deny them the right to work in Britain when we had jobs vacant and needed people to come here? That's the first thing. The second thing is cementing the accession countries into the European Union in that way was a way of strengthening our geopolitical position. They were members of NATO and members of the European Union. We want those countries to be part of us, not like the Ukraine balkanized by Putin.
Paul.
You see, I disagree with that. Although, in hindsight, I think that my disagreement is stronger. I think what we did is, first of all, he opened the door. Second, they underprepared people. They said, not many will come. Millions came. And then what they did is that they kept denying that it was having any downward impact on people's wages and conditions and their concept of citizenship, because this is an abstract concept of citizenship. We don't care that your granddad worked in this factory and your dad fought in the Second World War. Somebody else can arrive with the same citizenship as you, and I think people were just underprepared by us, the Labour movement and Labour Party, for that shock.
And is that what has to some extent boosted support for the left and for Ed Miliband first as leader and then Jeremy Corbyn?
Well, and also for Eurosceptic parties on the right. I mean, one of the really interesting things, there's been a Twitter feed recently which has been reliving, called New Dawn 1997.
Oh, no.
It's been reliving the 97
Sounds
election
painful.
day by day. And what's really interesting is the extent to which Euroscepticism was there, bubbling away with the referendum party at the time. Let me make one other point about 97. We just saw people walking into Downing Street on the day Tony Blair became Prime Minister. Today, for the first time, I saw a map that the Labour Party had prepared of the route that he would take, where everyone would be. I mean, a proper full... That didn't happen spontaneously. That was planned to the very last detail.
Absolutely.
Nothing on that scale is happening in today's election because it's a snap election and everyone is flying by the seat of their pants, which is why you get mistakes like this morning over police numbers and why we've already had 5 or 6 comparable gaffes in a way that didn't happen in 97.
Will Labour ever win a landslide election again?
Well, I think people are writing the Labour Party off are forgetting that 20 years ago people were writing the Tory Party off. Even about 6 years ago, in fact 2 years ago, people were saying you'd never have a majority government in this country ever again. I think we're about to prove that one heartily wrong. So, this sort of stuff about writing parties off is for the birds.
All right, gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I've been getting